right, hey everybody. Today we're going to actually cover the setbacks for an ADU in the city of Poway, and we're going to talk about how they differ if you have a single-story ADU versus a actual two-story ADU, and if you can actually build a two-story ADU on your property. So there's some limitations on if you can or cannot. So first thing we'll cover is this is going to be detached. So we're just going to be actually just talking about detached ADU today. So and these limitations can be limited by an HOA. So you got to get an HOA approval on this. So this is just City of Poway requirements. So this can vary, and you can also be limited on the size of the ADU you can build by an HOA. So keep that in mind. Typically, City of Poway will allow you to go up to 1,500 square feet for an ADU. 1,200 is typical. Before it kind of kicks in, you have to upgrade your water meter to get your fire sprinklers. The water meter larger for handle the fire sprinkler load. So there's some other things that kick in if you go over 1,200. But for the most part, this is detached ADU in Poway without an HOA. So keep in mind, get approval from your HOA. Okay, so the first thing is if you have a single story ADU, you can go up to 4 feet from your interior side yard. So that's assuming that you don't have a street on one side of your property, say you're in a corner lot. So this is going to be like, I have a lot, I'm sitting in the middle of two properties, there's a house on either side of me. That would be considered an interior side yard, and you can go up to 4 feet from there. Now the kick to that is you have to be less than 16 feet tall for a single story ADU to be within that 4-foot setback. Now if you exceed 16 feet tall for a single story ADU, you're going to have to meet the setback for a typical single family dwelling. So we want to check the actual zoning for your property and see what that is. If it's 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, whatever that might be for your interior side yard setbacks, you want to make sure that you check that. And if you will have to meet that single family residence setback if you are over 16 feet. If you're under 16 feet, or if 16 feet or under, you can actually be up to 4 feet from the interior side yard. Okay, so now we're going to add, and actually that applies to rear yard as well. So keep that in mind. It's rear yard, interior side yard, and rear yard. Typically on most properties in Poway, your front yard setback is going to be 40 feet from your property line. So keep that in mind. A lot of times there's an easement for your road, and it may only be paved. Say it's a 60-foot wide easement, they may have only paved, or maybe it's 80 feet wide and they only pave 60 feet. There may be another 10 feet of, it looks like it's your property, maybe even have a landscape all the way down to the curb. It's not your property. So you want to make sure that you go find out exactly where your corners are at on the front of the property, and then you'll come back from that 40 feet. That's going to be your front yard setback. So, and they do not, or very, very rarely grant a variance for a front yard setback. They're very firm on that. So we've checked on this on a number of properties, and they do not grant variances for a front yard setback. So keep that in mind as well when you're planning out your project. Okay. So we covered interior side yards, we've covered rear, and those are both for single story homes under 16 feet or under. We can go up to 4 feet, 15 feet, or the standard typical single family residence setback if you're over 16. Okay, now let's talk about if you can build a 1-story or a 2-story ADU. Okay, so the city of Poway says that you can build a 2-story ADU if your existing current residence is a 2-story home. So if you have a 1-story home, you will not be able to build a 2-story ADU. Now, we did have an instance where we had a home that had a walkout basement. So you had a main level home, and then you had the lower level that actually came out in the backyard. So this is a sloping lot, slope from the front to the back, lower in the back. And they said that because you did have, it was a 2-story, even though it wasn't 2-story out of the ground, it was 2-story into the ground, they allowed them to build a 2-story ADU, but they did not, they limited it to the height of the home on the first story. This particular house had a very tall foyer, it had a high, or very steep pitch on the roof. So they were able to get some pretty good height out of it, and were able to actually do a 2-story home, but they had to keep the pitch down. So you cannot exceed the height. So if you have a 2-story home, you're limited to the height of your of that home for the new ADU. So you can't exceed that height, but you are allowed to build it if you have a 2-story home. If you have 1-story single-family home, existing single-family home, you don't have an option to build a 2-story single-family home. That's typical City of Poway rules as far as that goes. Okay, so now let's talk about how that affects ADU again. And so if we do 2-story, going to 4 feet, the setback on the interior side yard or the rear yard is not an option. So you're going to have to stick to typical height or setback requirements because of the height of the home that would be required for a typical single family dwelling, which you may have a 20-foot rear yard setback or somewhere in that ballpark. So you check your rear yard setbacks, check your interior side yard setbacks, and then check your front yard as well, but typically it's about 40 feet, regardless if it's a single family or an ADU that is single story or 2-story. So that gives you a little bit of an overview on setbacks, and just make sure that you check that and make sure that height is dialed in, and you also check and confirm with the city that they are showing your home as a 2-story if you're wanting to build a 2-story, and then make sure those setbacks are met when you go to submit that for approval to the City of Poway. So, all right, hope that helps. And if you want more information, visit our website at tfgonline.com, and you can get a ton of downloads that we have there. Go to our resources page. We have a ADU cost guide. We got a ADU floor plans. There's a ton of information on building homes, buying land. You can get a ton of information there. You can also watch a ton more videos on our YouTube channel. So check that out as well. Just look up Freeman's Construction Inc. All right. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.